After a few weeks of trying out these lights, I'm very excited to share with you some of my favorite things, some of my not so favorite things with the YongNuo lights I got. I've got a full review for you coming up. Hey everyone, this is Jeff from Everyday Tech Fits, where we take the mystery out of your cell phones, tablets, gadgets, gizmos, all the cool stuff you guys got running around, and we'll get you straightforward answers to your straightforward questions. If you are new here and you would like to see more content like this, please do consider subscribing. If at any time during the video I do mention links or maybe some notes or things like that, I will include that information in the show notes below. So in YouTube, if you go into the description box, you'll find all that information in there. So it's time for my full review of the YongNuo YN600L Series 2 LED lights. That's a lot to say. As always, when I'm reviewing something, I do want to start with the things I really liked about these lights. One of the biggest positives I found of these lights is they are quite bright. In a lot of situations, even in my studio here, I've actually been having to dial them down a little bit, but two of them should work really well for a lot of different situations. So just out of the lights themselves, you're going to get a lot of brightness. It's been a long time coming, but I am super excited to have the bi-color ability as well. The lights that I've had in the past have always been indoor balanced, which is okay, but for some people maybe that aren't more experienced with lights, one big thing that can be a little tricky is that if you have, light coming in from outside is much cooler. So it's more on the blue end of things, whereas you can think of indoor light as being more, yellow or orange and that sort of the spectrum. But bicolor lights are really nice because they have both LEDs and they have both those colors, and then you can kind of blend them together to dial your color in really nicely, and these do a really good job of that. Speaking of color as well, I did have a friend come over who does director of photography work, and he looked at them, we did some tests with them, and he actually found that they were fairly accurate. They do produce a pretty accurate color temperature to what they say they're producing. One of my other favorite features of these guys is that when you dial one up or turn one on, they're automatically linked to one another. So say I'm dialing it up and I'm turning up more of the indoor temperature, so I'm turning that way up. As I'm doing that, the other one will do it at the same time. It's a really nice feature to have because it'll keep your lights perfectly balanced, so you don't accidentally mess with the color temperature on one and then not the other, and then end up with a weird, lighting scheme. So it's something that just is kind of a preventative measure, but it's a really nice thing to have. One of the other big factors that makes these such a great set to get is that they're only 115 bucks a panel. I will note though that you do have to buy the power sources separately. They don't include them. If you already have some Sony batteries, they will work with Sony batteries, but if you don't, you're gonna have to get the power sources, and those run about 25 bucks a piece. Even at 140 for each panel though, that's really not that bad. Comparatively, you can spend sky's the limit on bicolor panels. So for something that's fairly accurate, nice and bright, and actually a pretty good build, these are a really, really good deal. In my unboxing video, I did mention that they came with remotes, which is kind of cool. There's a few features and a few things you can do with these. One big thing, obviously, you can turn the lights on or off, so you'll be able to turn them both on, both off. You can work with multiple lights with these. You can also adjust the color temperature, which is really nice. And then you can also just adjust the channels. So you can set them to different channels if you have more than two and you want to kind of arrange them in a different manner or power them up differently, however you want to do that. There's a lot of flexibility you get with this little remote. There is also an app you can get with these. I played with it a little bit, but it seems fairly similar to just the remote. So if you have the remote, it works just fine. But that's actually what I've worked with more, is the remote over the app. A big thing to note with this little remote though is that it does have an on-off switch for the remote. So for the remote itself, it does have a little on-off switch. So if you're not using it, do just make sure to shut it down so that you're not, just wasting even a little bit of battery for it to be connecting or trying to connect to your lights. All right, so that wraps up just some of my favorite things about these lights. All in all, even though there's a few things I'm gonna bring up that I don't like as much, I would still call these a buy no matter what. But just to be fair, I wanna make sure I let you know some of the things I didn't like as much about these new lights. One of the things I didn't like so much about the lights is the mount that it came with. The mount has a very weird insert in it. I'm not sure exactly what size it is. I had to kind of play with it a little bit to get it to sit on my regular Lowell stands, which are just a standard size. So I don't understand why they included like a weird connector with it. And then also it doesn't include any ball heads. So there's no ball heads. So you don't have an ability to like tilt and pan the light. Really all you have is the ability to just set on top of a stand and turn it left or right. You can't go forward or backward. So I will probably be looking in to get a couple of just ball heads for those so that I can actually kind of of shaped the light a little more to my liking, but it would have been nice if they had just included a little bit nicer of a connector for that. The next thing I was kind of unimpressed with was the instruction manual that came with it. Now I do understand these are direct shipped from China, so you know, translations can get lost and stuff like that, but they were quite clunky, so really you just kind of have to figure everything out on your own, which I did. But it would have been nice if there was a better set of instructions included, but for the price point, it really wasn't a big deal to take a little bit of time to figure out how they worked. One other thing that gets brought up a lot about these lights is the fans that are built into the back. They do have sort of like what looks like a little laptop fan built into the back to help cool them. So far in my application, wearing a lapel mic, I have not picked up much of them. You'd really have to turn the volume up, and then you even can barely hear it when it's on this microphone. When I tested it using the built-in microphone on my Canon 5D, you can pick it up a little bit more because that just kind of picks up everything. So that did come through a little more, but they are pretty whisper quiet. So unless you're working in a room that's, you know, demands very quiet audio, I think you should be just fine with those fans. They shouldn't cause any big issues. On Amazon, there were a few different people who described ways that they had sort of prevented the fans from running. So I will provide a link to these on Amazon so you can not only check them out, but if you look in the comments, a lot of people had mentioned that if they had that issue, they had ways of fixing it. So there is some good information there. All right, so my question of the day to you is, what kind of lights are you using right now? When I first started shooting video, I actually got just a couple of can lights from Home Depot, and I was just sort of taping diffusion on the top of them and using higher powered bulbs. I was doing all this just very haphazardly put together stuff, but it's what I started with, and I am really happy with these YongNuo lights. They're doing a great job. But what are you using right now, and what has you thinking about switching over to a set like this? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks everyone for tuning into this review of the YongNuo lights. If you do have any questions about these lights, please feel free to leave a comment below. And if you really did like this content or you want to check out more stuff like this, best way to do that is to subscribe.